And what we've got is we're connected and we're using MatterSphere 7.2. So the interface might be subtly different to what you're used to. And certainly the menus are a bit different in a few areas, but functionality is essentially the same. So the first thing that I'm going to have a look at is under the standard menus, we're going to be using the standard functionality of Precedent Manager to be able to store and retrieve and use the precedents, but it's the editing tool that's different with Precedent Assist. So on our test server, I've got a couple of client care letters that we're going to be able to work with. So it's a standard client care letter introducing a new client to our law firm, and the fee earners that'll be taking care of them. Because we're wanting to edit this, rather than clicking on continue, let's click on the edit there. So I'm going to take this standard template, and you can see we've got a very general layout for the letter there. And what I've done for the demonstration is you can see that there's a number of fields that we're going to drop in there. So a really basic letter and a nice simple example to work with. So generally, if you were preparing a brand new precedent template, you would use the standard current document interface. Quite a few of you know and love this. So what you would do, you would use the add a field. And as Gary said, a lot of the problems with using the out-of-the-box interface, that a lot of those very powerful and useful fields are buried deep in these menus, and it's not very clear which, for example, if you were to type in an address field, which of the options that are returned here, which one's going to give you the right information merged into your document. So we all know the limitations of the standard interface. So I'm going to go straight on and show you what benefits we've got from Precedent Assist. So the software, the add-in actually installs on a user-by-user basis. So each machine will require an install. And you'll see that over on the right-hand side, there's a section for MOSMAR, and we've got Precedent Assist. So if I activate that, it's connecting directly to the database. It's using fields from the database. So the first thing I'll do is give you a really basic tour of what all the buttons are and what they do. And then I'll start to build the actual template in front of us. And you'll see for yourself how quick it is to use and how nice it is to actually assemble these precedents. So the first thing that I'm going to show you is that the buttons, the main functionality, is on each of these areas here. Hovering for a few seconds will give you a bit of feedback as to what they do. You'll see that we've got an area at the bottom that as I click on my fields here, it gives me a good description of what the field does and the actual field code that it's pulling from the database. And also, as well, we've got functionality at the bottom, which I'll have a little look at a bit of that shortly. And Gary will be looking at some of the more advanced features and developer features towards the bottoms there. So the initial views that we have is that when we look at all of the fields in a single place, you've got a much larger viewing area. So we can see all of the fields in a single pane. We can adjust that pane according to the size of the monitor or laptop or screen, or if you've got particularly long custom fields that you have for your own installation and custom lookup tables, you can also adjust those as well. So that's quite nice to customize for each user. Now the other thing that we can do is as well is by clicking this button, you can see that it's either going to allow us to group all the similar fields together or have it in a long list. So depending on your preference, you've got that. Now the other thing as well is that as I'm looking at the fields as well, it's showing me, for example, if I typed in the word user, the search is very quick, as you can see there. If it's got information accessible to it, it will show you a preview of what that information is. If I type in the word, for example, like fee earner, because we don't have any like live records on screen, live matters on screen, it doesn't have any information yet. So one of the nicest things that we can do, rather than watching or viewing the fields in various views, is if I go just to the right here, I can toggle what we call the context view. So if I click on this button here, it will allow me to view all of these fields with respect to maybe a live case that I'm working with or types of cases. So we're going to drop in a test client, and we're going to drop in Mr. and Mrs. Brooke here, and it's going to be a standard purchase example. So what happens is the system, it goes away, and I'll take it off group mode so you can see what's happening there. Ooh, and if I can type the word fee earner properly. it's actually replacing those fields with the actual allotted fee earner for this case. The fee earner's email, extension number if it exists, fee earner's manager, and taking off that view reverts back to the original fields as well. So you can switch between that, and that's very, very nice to use. So that's some of the basics in there. What I'm going to do is show you how we can put these fields into the document and how we can build precedents very, very quickly with this. So let's have a little look. The first one that I'm going to have a little look at, and I'll clear the search down there, is if I want to drop in the fee earner name, I'm just going to highlight the following and delete that placeholder text. And what we can do is a plain language search there, so fee earner. So the fee earner's full name is Chris Troth. So I can take that field, and the real nice thing is I can drag it exactly where I want it. So you've got very precise editing and instant preview to know that you've got the right field. Moving on to the next one, we can do the same with branch. We can do a plain English search here, so we'll change that for branch. And I can see that the fee earner's branch descriptions Brighouse, I'll drag that across too. Just correct the space there. And the same with department. Now this one's going to be a little bit different. So you'll see what happens straight away, because this is very common in MatterSphere. Because the database is set up with lots of sort of tables behind the scenes, code lookups, etc., custom tables, custom user data. If I type in department, what it's doing is looking up the fee earner's department, but it's only giving a code back. So a 3-letter code is not very useful. If I wanted to, for example, describe what team the current fee earner, Chris Troth, was working for, I'd like it to say, for example, residential property team, commercial compliance team. So what we can do with this one is a really nice feature, is we can do a code lookup. So the traditional interface, if I was to do this, is Spartan at best. You've got to really know the field that you're looking for and know precisely the lookup type that you want to do. So it's very developer heavy. So if I use the Precedent Assist one, what I'm going to do, let's get rid of that prop legal team. So I want to look up this prop lookup code, and we can do that by changing the interface. So we ask for it to perform a lookup function. So the drag and drop is the really nice part of it. I can say, I want to look up the word prop from this field. And this little drop down will look at all the available tables that I can drag that descriptive text from. But 9 times out of 10, the field that you're looking for will have a reasonably sensible name. So if I look for the department text, it's going to look up the word prop from the department code lookup table and insert that into the letter. So as long as I've got my cursor on the following here, it will drop that in. So what's really nice about Precedent Assist that we can preview it immediately. So if we've got this correct, when I hit the refresh button, there we go. So it's doing instant code lookups rather than having to save the document, reload it with like a test matter, checking that it works before moving on to the next field. So that whole process has cut out maybe 2.5 minutes of saving and testing. So that's really, really nice feature there. So generally the examples that I've got are variations on a theme. So I just want to put the following manager in here. And Gary's going to move on very shortly to some of the more complex examples. So manager, there we go. Now, what I'm going to finish with here is that typically when we're looking for date or time-based information inside of MatterSphere, that the database tables have a mixture of long dates, short dates, today's dates, times, timestamps, etc. And there's a little bit of inconsistency in the way that fields can display. And specifically, some of these exist to help you display information a little bit more easily. Now, what we have is a much easier way of being able to do that inside the following. We've got format fields. So under the function format fields, I can say, well, I'm looking for date-based information here. I would like that date-based information to display in a certain way. So these standard format templates, you could choose one that matches your in-house style in just a few seconds and be able to add the field in. So as an example, we might want to communicate the next review date for a case, and I can see that the database holds this information, but I want to display it in this kind of way. So as long as I put the space in there, cursor's in the right place, and use the insert button. So generally, as you see there, I've been able to assemble a very accurate sort of client care letter first time round, and I've been able to check and rectify any mistakes. So that whole process, without sort of the description and discussion behind it, generally would take maybe about 3 or 4 minutes to fully assemble this.